watching us via YouTube or Facebook. So we are back with our Superhero Accountants and Bookkeepers Club. And I'm very delighted to have on board Lucy Cohen, co-founder of Mazuma. So good morning, Lucy, and thank you very much for being on board.
Good morning, you're very welcome. You're very welcome.
So Lucy, just to kind of show you, we have, obviously you see accountancy professionals from different kind of places. We have also Linda, she is accountancy coach from Australia. So we are really international club this morning or this afternoon for her. So it will be great if we can all share together as usual. So just a few things. If you're not speaking, please put yourself on mute. If you would like to speak, please ask and I'll bring you onto the stage. So we have been discussing this Making Tax Digital, and we have very heavily focused on how are we ready? How are we getting ready for our clients? What do we need to do? How do we onboard them digitally and so on? And, you know, it's kind of, that's all we can think about. It seems like it these past few weeks. But the reality is, and this was kind of on the back of an article I have seen, and that's kind of how I got Lucy more under my radar, where there is astonishing a portion of businesses that are nowhere near ready. And I'm thinking, are we doing it maybe from a wrong angle, or are we starting at the wrong place? Because yes, we are getting ready ourselves, our practices, our businesses, but is there anything we should be doing kind of along with our clients directly? Because it's going to, for some of them, it's going to be a huge, huge shock. And I know many of them will struggle, as we have seen with the first MTD. So I'm going to ask this question. We'll start with Lucy, but obviously I'd like to hear from you guys, and Chloe, from you as well, because you have their industry insights. How do you feel, Lucy, that your clients, your small self-employed businesses, how are they tackling this? Are they even thinking about it? Is it even under their radar? And if they heard about it or they know about it, what is the feedback you're getting? Do they see it as a burden, or do they actually see it as a positive thing? And what would you say is the ratio of prepared versus non-prepared?
Yeah, great question. So I think that it's worth caveating my response here is that we work in a very specific type of market. Our clients tend to not be, well, we divide our clients into two sections. We've got pro tech, who are digital savvy, use apps, are happy, using cloud software. We call them pro tech. And then we've got no tech, and they are people who tend to have more manual jobs. They live in a world that's full of crumpled up bits of paper. And they're also people who are not kind of what I'd say digitally native. So they're not, they're not using Uber. They're not, if they need a goods or service, they're not going to Google it. They go and ask a friend or talk to someone down the pub. And those are the clients that are going to find this a massive shock. Now, for us, the way that we tackled it was a few years ago now, when this kind of started on the horizon, we took the same approach to it as we did to RTI when that came in. Was we kind of went, right, let's take the path of least resistance here. We could try and educate all of our thousands of clients about this and spend time with them and all that stuff and try and get them to use some sort of system, or we can just solve that problem for them. And ultimately, we decided it was actually easier for us to solve that problem. And what that has actually meant, and this isn't obviously something I know that everyone's going to do, but it's actually meant that we've built a platform ourselves for our clients to use, which is a very pared back, very scaled down digital platform, which that entry point to it is super accessible, and anyone can use that. And in fact, we've been speaking to in this like we've been speaking to a few other accountants who are just like, I don't know how I'm going to get my plumbers into MTD, and they just asked to use our platform for it instead. So that's been, we didn't expect that would happen when we built it, but that has. So it's great that we've got that, but we very much saw it as a problem for us to solve rather than a problem for clients. And you know what's really interesting is that a lot of accountants then have taken that a step further and see it as a problem for software vendors to solve, which is fine if your clients are quite happy using a piece of software or they're happy to pay for that piece of software through you. But the problem we've got is with the clients who are not digitally engaged, who are unreliable users of software. We've all got them. Clients like, no, I'll do it all myself in Xero, and then you open it up and it's an absolute shambles. So you're like, I can't work with this. what are we going to do? So those are the ones for which it's a real problem. And I think you have to decide as a firm, are you going to spend a bit of time educating and then setting some very clear boundaries and parameters and saying, look, if you're not using this piece of software, I'm going to need you to because of this. If you're not getting stuff updated by this point in the month, then the implication could be it's filed it. A bit like we do with VAT currently. You know, I'm sure all of you have got clients on MTD for VAT, and you're like, look, if you haven't done it by this date, then I can't really help you. You're going to need to sort your lives out. And you kind of have to make that decision whether you're going to solve the problem or you're going to educate your clients to solve it for themselves. And there's no wrong decision here. It has to be the right thing for you and your practice, whichever way you approach it. But whichever way you approach it, have a plan, implement it, follow it through, and then follow up on it and stick to that, and don't make exceptions. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a position as a firm where you're running 5 different sets of procedures for 100 different clients, and it's going to make your life absolutely unbearable. And that is not why any of us started an accounting firm, really.
That is very true. So the exception, that's a big one, because I remember when I was in the practice, we kind of didn't seem to get through all of the clients, and even the partners, all of them, they weren't on board. So they would have been thinking, okay, so we can treat those few differently, but yeah, it just makes things more difficult. So the way you describe in it seems like you consciously made decision that you are going to invest into this kind of taking a proactive approach, not waiting for your clients that you were proactive, but you've seen it probably, because I'm sure in terms of the resources, it was an easy thing to do, and probably you didn't see the return on investment straight away on it.
No, we still haven't. Yeah, this is still very much a loss leader. But we the reason we kind of went down that route was it was a few things. We just decided to make our lives really difficult over the pandemic, and build a whole technology platform and ledger software during a pandemic, which is interesting. It was an interesting challenge, but it gave us, what it did do was it kind of gave us gave management team a bit of the opportunity to step outside the business. So when we've all been office based and you're in it, you're around it, you're hearing whatever else is going on, you kind of get dragged into other conversations. Because our senior management team were out of that environment, it meant that we had a bit more focus, and we got the opportunity to strategize. And it was all about it we didn't start off with that mindset, but it became really clear to us, and for our specific client base, we've not got a client base who, 47% of them aren't even VAT registered. So they're not, we've got a large percentage of people who turn over a small amount of money, and who, for them, an investment in an comparatively expensive piece of cloud software, it wasn't going to cut it for them. It'd be make or break is in terms of a price point. So we've got a real price sensitivity in terms of our market as well. We had to make a decision, and we're like, right, we have to make a decision. We've got at this point 2.5 years. We have to make a decision. We have to then set a path, and then follow that path, and then the outcome will be, hopefully what we hope it's going to be, but that's what the outcomes will be, and we can't chop and change. It's been very tempting at points when it's got very difficult to be like, oh no, should we have just done this differently? But we have to stick to that path. So yeah, we made the decision to go, right, this is how we're approaching it. We've decided we can invest this amount of resource in doing it, and that is what we're going to do. So I don't know, check back at me in 18 months and see if it was the right decision.
We will. We will, taking your word for it. Thank you. Chloe, when you listening to Lucy, and kind of Lucy is having her kind of accountancy firm or bookkeeping firm hat on, but you kind of are there on the ground, and you probably see many businesses and sole traders. So we're talking really about those sole traders who are kind of, they move in the economy, all different traders, and they are vital to our industry. What do you see? Do you see kind of that the accountants for those would be taking similar approach to Lucy, or is this a science fiction or maybe wishful thinking? And is it more that the accountants are saying, okay, you have to sort yourself out? How do the businesses feel? Do they feel supported? Do they feel it's the right time for them to do it?
I think it's difficult. I think certainly my experience when the large companies that over the VAT threshold went to MTD a couple of years ago, for the smaller companies, it was as much about knowledge around VAT itself as it was about knowledge around software. And I appreciate if you have an accountant checking your figures for you and doing your submission for you, then that's a slightly different scenario. But a lot of the kind of unease was around just getting the numbers right in a piece of software that people weren't necessarily familiar with, didn't know how to reconcile across the different ledgers. And in the same way that RTI for payroll suddenly made everything, whilst it sped everything up and made everything more efficient, it also, I think, put a greater onus on people, which I suppose is the point, to get it right at the time. But that in itself sort of added to the stress, because people couldn't go away and do things in spreadsheets or on bits of paper, or it was very, the numbers had to be correct when they hit submit. So we did a lot of hand holding and just general user training, I suppose, and would be involved in calls with people on that first MTD submission, just to, as I say, to kind of coach them through it, albeit we didn't obviously advise on their figures because they were their figures, but it was just I suppose, like I said, a hand holding.
Okay. Yeah, so it really, piece of software doesn't guarantee that you have the figures right. I think we all learned that in a hard way in the practice, and actually the piece of software can potentially do more harm than good. Sharon, I'm conscious you have to leave earlier today, so I'd like to hear from you based on what you said, and I appreciate you are dealing with the kind of accountancy practice side, but is there any vibe that you're getting that maybe the businesses themselves would be pushing for more education, more training to get this? Because ultimately not everybody will go to the accountant, or not everybody will be able to afford one either. So can you see any trends or any gossip? Can you hear any gossip, see any vibes on this?
I love that you come to me for gossip.
We know you are a good spy, yes.
I'm not sure if I do have gossip on that particular topic, and I'm sorry if my signal's not good this morning. Yep, so hi everyone, and thanks as usual for the insights shared so far. Of course, with any change, training is going to be key as we go into it. So I'm from Mercia Group, and we do focus on training accountants to enable them to train their clients. So yes, my feel, for what it's worth ever, is that the businesses absolutely need training, but a lot of that is going to be in the form of coaching, I think, really, from their accountant, from their business advisor, whether that's a formal or an informal relationship. A lot of that learning is going to be happening on the job. And going back to what Lucy was saying, having the right platform, the right solution that's right for that business. And I loved the, was it non-tech and pro-tech classifications. Yeah, it's just so important to get all of that right.
Very good, thank you. Linda, from what you heard so far, and kind of because you are where you are in Australia, and I would love to hear specifically what you think about what Lucy said and their approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eva. I think, well, I love Lucy's approach. It's a very pragmatic approach. It's like, seize the day and let's just get this done. So what we don't see is a lot of that generally happening in accounting, though. And I think, that leads on from our discussions of previous weeks around, not waiting. I think, this thing is not going away, whether it gets rescheduled or pushed out a little bit, it still is going to come. So, being very smart as far as planning for your business, planning for your clients, and, formulating a plan and just going for it, like Lucy did. I think that's something that everybody needs to take some time to do. We did touch on client segmentation, which I love, the pro tech and the no tech as well. I think that's great, because that's something you really need to consider. But as in what I do, and I think what accountants underestimate, is that your clients want to hear from you. They will trust your advice, but you've got to, as a business or a firm, decide what that advice will be first. Don't go, trying to talk about it and work it out with your client. Actually decide what's right for your business and for your team, and even, taking into account the clients that you do have. And you may have different sections of those clients that there'll be certain, just different offerings for. And then I think too that another thing that complicates things a little bit for us as accountants is that, we are used to billing time. I mean, that's where we come from. Traditionally, that's where we come from. So when we're going through a change process for us and for our business, a change in an education process for our clients, you're not going to be able to spend an hour, bill an hour. That's not going to be like that. And, I'd love to hear Lucy's side of that with when they rolled out this program or this offering that they had for their clients, what that looked like for them. Because you've got to then, if you decide that you are going to support your clients through this with various different offerings and educate them, you're going to have to look at this as an investment in goodwill, an investment in your business. And take it from that side of things. So it's a different way of looking at, planning for your business and taking your accounting business into the future. But accountants shouldn't underestimate. Clients do want to hear from you. They will listen to your advice. They do trust you. You've just got to work out what that advice is going to be for you. That's what I'd say anyway, Eva.
Thanks, Linda. Lucy, would you like to react to Linda's question?
Yeah. So, I mean, the way that we work, again, it kind of goes against, I suppose it goes against kind of industry norms, in that we kind of describe how we work as having applied a manufacturing business model to a service-based business. So we're very particular about how we do things. We have a very set process. And for us, this change into MTD was kind of messing with that. It was like, right, we've had this process for however many years, and suddenly we've got to think about how we're going to deal with this massive fly in the ointment. It's going to mess up our process. And our profit is made off that process being efficient. We're a true subscription model. So it's not fixed fee. It's not we can add in extras. It's a subscription model. The price they pay is the price they pay. And if we get it wrong, that's our profit that takes a hit. So it's, I'm aware that we walk a very fine line. And that was the reason we decided to put this time and effort and investment into creating a platform and a technology and a system that worked for us. Because when we started looking at using other platforms and plugging them in and then training clients, it became very messy. So what we've done is we've basically said to our clients, you don't have to do anything differently. We're taking that on. We're taking that burden. So even in the era of MTD, where we've got clients who free post to us physical paperwork, we've made the decision to go, right, okay, we'll digitize that. We'll get that through we've got high capacity scanners. We'll get it through our scanner. our machine learning and AI, and we'll do that piece for them. Because once it's into our system, that's it. You know, once we've got the data in raw digital format, and we can use our technology to extract that data, etc. Yeah, that's easy. It's just getting it in there in the first place. That was the biggest hurdle, and it was much easier to actually invest and do that than it was to try and teach a couple of thousand clients how to use a receipt scanning or receipt snapping app or do something like that themselves. So yeah, that was kind of why we did it. Again, maybe check in with me in a year to see if it was a terrible idea or not, but we're hoping it wasn't.
Very good, interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely check in with you, because I think when I was in the practice, and we did some mistakes because it was the first time around, and we were probably pushing to get some clients on digital, and it never worked out. We never seen the return on investment. So I think you have to be very, very careful in the way you approach it. I admire the process that you have described. Now, tell me this, Lucy, if you would have a sole trader in front of you and you want to get him on board, and you want him to he is quite, okay, let's call him ProTech, using smartphone and everything. What would you say to him, why I want you to do it? Because many clients turn to us and they say, okay, so you'll be doing less work, but you'll still charging me the same or even more.
Yeah.
So what would you tell them?
I think it's worth saying that obviously a new piece of legislation comes in here, and every time a new piece of legislation comes in, we need to define what work actually is. Is work pushing data into software? Is that all they think? Is that what our clients think we do? Just put data into software? And I'm gonna throw some shade here at software vendors, because I blame them for this. We've had, since I've been in this game, God, too long now. I'm much older than I was when I started. But I've been running a firm for 15 years now, and even back in the early days, even back before cloud accounting, there's this kind of underlying message from software vendors that you can have this bit of software and you almost don't need an accountant. Look at this, it files your taxes and it tells you things in real time. And obviously, as accountants, we all know that's absolute rubbish. That client could put absolutely anything they wanted into that piece of software, and it doesn't mean it's right. But software vendors have done an excellent job of almost trying to, despite the fact they have accountants as a vertical and selling through accountants constantly, they almost seem to imply in their kind of TV adverts that you don't need an accountant, which I think is shameful. So we've got a battle on our hands as an industry to having to continue to prove our value. Now, this isn't something that lawyers ever have to do, because people understand that when you go to a lawyer, the consequences of getting incorrect legal advice are, imprisonment, or paying out huge fines, or being liable for something. So the pain point of not listening and not engaging is much higher, or perceived to be much higher, than it is with an accountant. So what we have to do as an industry is we've got to all join hands across the oceans and solidarity, and make a commitment to say, even if we're selling that piece of software, even if we're a platinum partner of somebody, to say, yeah, it's a lovely piece of software, but it's not really for you, it's for me. It's for me to interpret, read, correct, advise on what I see within that software. You see some numbers and a set of pretty graphs. I see advice to give and problems to solve. And we need to be much better as a community about articulating our value to clients. And I think that we've because our voices haven't been as one a lot of the time, and because it's only more recently we've moved into an era of cooperation rather than competition, we've allowed the door to be opened for kind of other vendors to say, oh, you almost don't need an accountant. And that's why clients don't value us. That's why this question of, but I'm using software now, it's less work for you. Well, it's less of one sort of work, but it's more of another. So, and also, you're not paying me for the hours I work. You're paying me for the the years of experience and advice and all that stuff, and very expensive qualifications. And we need to be better at articulating that value proposition to clients, just as an industry as a whole.
Oh my goodness, Lucy, you just sprang the string for something I feel very strongly and I'm very sensitive about, even now working for a software vendor. But you are so right. We had so many clients who just thought that I had a piece of cloud bookkeeping software, that they the experts, and those kind of accreditation courses also kind of giving them so much confidence, but they knew how to use the software probably, but they still didn't know how it should look like when it's coming out on the other end.
Sorry to cut over you, but it drives me absolutely bananas. And I just think, do you know what? You could go and build your own extension on your house. You could go and do that if you wanted to. If you build a 3-meter extension, you don't need planning permission. Off you go and stick an extension on your house and go and put some electricity in it and some wiring, some plumbing. You are allowed to go and do that. And maybe if you watch enough YouTube videos, you think you can do it. But very few people actually try and do that because they understand the consequences of getting something like that wrong. It drives me mad that somehow accountancy is so often devalued because people think that it's just putting numbers in a spreadsheet or it's just using a piece of software. I had a friend of mine this morning, woke up this morning, had a WhatsApp from her. She'd asked her accountant a question about auto enrollment and they came back with a bit of a fuzzy answer. So she came and asked me and I was like, that's lovely. She'd asked HR, her HR advisor. I was like, well, first of all, ask your accountant because they'll definitely know the answer to this question about auto enrollment. I said, but also the answer is this. Like, I'd just woken up, it was like 7:05 and I already was like dishing out a piece of advice for the day. That's what accountants can do. Accountants can wake from a slumber, groggy and bleary-eyed, and answer a question about auto enrollment. That's a piece of software can't do that.
It's in our DNA. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
I love that. Louise, you were very quiet, but considering your experience and your background, I want to hear what you think about what Lucy said.
Hi. Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Lucy. I think the software companies and I've worked with software companies. I've sold accounting software to accountants, and I think where I think the software companies have been good is to obviously raise the awareness of technology and how to automate. But I think there is an area where there's definitely kind of the positioning to the accountants and the advice of giving the accountants of when introducing this software of how to position it to clients. I think more could have been done, definitely, because I think they have positioned it as in an easy, this is easy to use, it will help you, it will help your clients, everything's so easy. The cost as well has always been very minimal when they started. But I do think they probably missed a trick with actually helping the industry position it, and almost, I mean, we always use the word sales and people sometimes, like you said, think it's a dirty word. I still think accountants actually need and do in a lot of cases sell their services, and the advice they give is the value proposition that they're selling. The output is the reports, is the set of accounts and everything that they need. But actually, it, like you said, it's the years of experience, it's the exams, the value that you're positioning. And I think accountants moving into using software from years back, there would have been, and I've seen it, is that disconnect of actually doing a job and producing outputs to actually then positioning and selling their services. And I think that's where, for me, definitely where I saw a disconnect. So a lot of what I did when I was talking to a lot of accountants and selling the services and offering the advice was more about helping the accountants of how they go to market, how they can get more for the services they were charging, and how they could actually position that to the clients to be able to say, this is actually what I do for you. And I think your point of the software is not for you, it's for me, is key. I think if the clients can put information in and you've trained them of what to put in, and they can do the element of it, it actually just gives you a bit more time to reinvest that time, either, like I said, correcting it or producing reports and dashboards, but giving them actually the insight of their business. So yeah, I do agree with what you say there. I think definitely some of the software houses have missed a trick. I think they could have done a lot more, and perhaps from the onset of being seen to be more of that valid partner and the true kind of champions behind the industry.
Thank you, Louise. And this is very interesting because for those of you who are recurring on our club, we do a lot talk about how to demonstrate our value, really, because it is something we have struggled with over the years, and we have been probably put down quite a lot. So we have struggled to put the message across. Yes, Lucy, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I was going to say there's somebody gave a really good analogy about that and the role of software. I can't remember who it was, so I can't give them credit, so I'm just going to steal it. They gave a really good analogy about it, and the role of software is that I could go and buy the most expensive and professional power drill out there, but it doesn't mean I'm a carpenter. And that's how we need to be talking about software. Software is a tool. It's not the thing that does the work. It's something that helps us provide the service, not just do work, but provide the service. Again, I go back to my comparison with lawyers. Nobody ever goes to a lawyer and goes, "Oh, I'm not paying that. It's only going to take you 5 minutes," because you're so grateful that they're getting you out of hot water that you just pay for it. And we pay a patent attorney to do our trademarking, and we've got 2 trademarks we submitted the other day, and I'm pretty certain it didn't take them very much time, but I've got no idea how to do it, and I haven't got time to do it, so I'm quite happily pay their fees. And we just don't seem to be, and I do fear we're moving even further away from that place with accountancy, because I mean we've seen it a little bit. We saw one of the, I won't name them, but we saw one of the big software suppliers this week sort of have to issue a half apology because they'd gone direct to users rather than via accountant with some.
Yes.
I mean, leapfrogging that relationship that sold you the client in the first place. And it really raises some scary questions about who owns that client data. Who do they think owns that client? Do they think it's their client, or do they think it's the accountant's client? We're in murky water, folks, and I think we've got to be very united about how we approach this.
That's very true, Lucy, very true. David, would you like to add anything from your perspective?
Yeah, hi everyone, and thank you for having me on the program. It's been very, very enlightening. I'm also on the software developer, software provider environment side of things, and excuse me. It's just what I think that's going to be important going forward for MTD will be the collaboration with the clients. And I appreciate that there's the pro tech and the no tech people. So, but I think that there may be a room for what just around what Lucy was saying, which I really am impressed with, that you take on everything yourself and scan it, and that's a lot of effort, a lot of work. Whereas if there was what we advocate is for open banking, and for clients to link their bank accounts and be able to make it a bit more streamlined. What do you think about more collaboration and more streamlining of the processes? Make it easier for them, but also have some client involvement to make that easier for you and have less of that time commitment on your side. What do you think?
Lucy, would you like to take that one? until Lucy might
Sorry,
be.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm mute,
Are
sorry.
you okay?
I'm here, sorry. Just started talking into the ether then. So Mike, can you just clarify what your kind of David, sorry, what was your clarify the question you're kind of asking? Sorry, I wasn't quite clear.
So it's around involving clients to
Mhm.
link their bank accounts
Yeah.
and collaborate.
Yeah. Again, I think that yes, this very much falls into the pro-tech versus no-tech space.
Mhm.
You know, pro-tech are quite happy to do it because they like it. It's whizzy, it's fun. It saves them having to download a bank statement and send it to us. We've still got clients who don't have internet banking because they don't trust it, and there's absolutely no way on earth we're going to get them to do that. We do though with the no-tech clients, those that do have internet banking, and I say no-tech, they're not Luddites. But it's just not their priority to understand this stuff. We do have open banking integration, and we do say, look, we can get this set up for you. All you're going to need to do is obviously reconfirm that link every 90 days or whatever it is, and that is usually okay for them. A lot of them are quite able to send invoices off their phones and stuff. It's just the whole piece of using a bit of software they're not using. So yeah, open banking is definitely a time saver. But then of course you are assuming that these clients have a separate business bank account. Obviously in the UK there's no legal obligation for a sole trader to have a separate business bank account. If we were to link a personal bank account with our system via open banking in order to try and extract data, we'd end up with a lot of data we don't need in there, so that would present a different problem again. So yeah, it very much falls into whether these clients whether they are organized enough for it to make it worth our while, if that makes any sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, that is true. It was actually what I wanted to say. You need to have separate bank account because otherwise that can become very messy and blurry when you're trying to go through it. So Linda, you've been there unusually quiet in the background. I'm sure you kind of taking it all in, especially from what Lucy has to say. But looking at the journey so far that you had, and you see the accountants had with their clients, do you see, are there similarities? Is it the same? Or do you think people are maybe approaching it differently in your part of the world?
No, look, I do think the approach is, very similar. And, from what I've seen over the last 20 years here in Australia, when our consumption tax, GST, come into play, we certainly had these situations where, people were still bringing in the shoe boxes and the check butts and the manual records and all of that. And it was a big shake-up for us here in Australia around how are we going to manage all of this collection of data, and exactly what Lucy was saying, and to try to bring this into the firm to allow us to do what we need to do to enable, in some sort of efficient manner. And look, it's been 20 years down the track of that educating clients around that. And I would say that most businesses now, even something that is considered, the sole trader, they're really just, operating completely on their own, in a more like a job situation, a consultant type situation. They realise that they actually do need some software solution. And, it's then just around how do we get the data, from them and in a good and viable way. I have to admit, I was giggling very hard when Lucy was talking about the software, and it can just be rubbish when clients get hold of this software. And I've been accounting too long too, so I've experienced all of that. And the frustration that you have as an accountant when somebody says to you, but don't you just plug numbers into a computer system? I've done the numbers for you. Don't you just have to transfer them? Now, we know very well that is not the case. So I think what Lucy's saying about an industry is that we do have to first value ourselves. We do also have to learn to speak more about what it is that we do, and actually take maybe a firmer standing with our clients that if you are going into business, this is the reality of business and the costs of running a business. Now, this is what it will entail. We do need to collect the data. That's the first thing. But then in order to attend to your compliance requirements, we need fully qualified accountants to look at that, or, you know, qualified people to actually go through and manipulate that data, because, and software companies do have a fair bit to answer for. I get it. They want to sell software. And of course, the easiest way to do that is we will save you time, and it is easy. Yeah, great. But, you know, that's left us you know, accountants out there hanging a little bit. But in saying that, we can take up you know, that position for ourselves, and I don't think we've done that. And so I do think that we do need to stand up for ourselves a little bit, and rather than taking a supportive, reactive role, a much more proactive role in educating clients around what business is, the basic mechanics of business, what that is, educating them, empowering them. And I know Sharon spoke before about taking on more of a coaching type role. I'm a big proponent of that, because I think that can go a long way. And software definitely is just a tool. I've got a saying that shovels don't dig holes. So you can have the fanciest, loveliest, most expensive shovel, and it can sit in your garden shed and do nothing. That's exactly what software is. So yeah, but I think as an industry, we do need to come together, stand up for ourselves, and educate business owners around what it is we do, why we need the data, and why we're there to protect you as a business owner and a client, and the role that we play. Louise, you mentioned too about being able to position ourselves, or sales, if you want to call it that. I do think too that we need to better develop those skill sets within accounting, because that will help us to be able to create value, and be able to explain to clients, look, here's the deal. You know, yes, you put the data in, but I'm here to tell you, you've got it all wrong, and we've had to fix it up. Or going back to the client and, you know, just explaining where they're at. So I think we need to do, you know, there's some effort on that part, on educating clients. And yes, while there's some that just can't do that and are not going to do that, yes, we can look after them. But I think then as a firm, you may decide to go, okay, this is fine for however long you choose, but we would want to educate that client to maybe going into some sort of software solution, or becoming a little more sophisticated with how they do things, just as a reality of this is what it costs, and what you have to do as being a business owner these days. This isn't going away. This is only going to get more complex.
That is true. Thank you, Linda, for this. Lucy, I know we're talking about how MTD is affecting the businesses, but I'm really keen to hear from you on the fact that when you kind of have put this in place, and you probably using different approach to many of the accounting firms out there. Unfortunately, still many out there. We are getting better. When you see what is coming, and with the income tax, and there will be presumably, you know, much more deadlines throughout the year, do you feel that, or do you think that the level of workforce that you have, or your team, do you think that some of the levels or some of the specific kind of job roles will have to maybe expand more, or is it the case that some workers would need to kind of enhance their training or requalify, you know, to meet those maybe a little bit different requirements, so that your clients are being serviced in the right way?
Yeah, I mean, with developing a technology platform as well, we've obviously had a bit of a shift in terms of who we employ. So we used to employ people kind of at entry level who we could train up, spend that kind of quality time with them to use software, provide the service and things like that. And actually that's shifting. We're seeing now natural wastage at the kind of lower end of the scale in terms of the firm, and then only kind of employing semi-senior to senior staff which are providing the service. So the cost of providing the service, because of needing staff that are more autonomous, so there's more to do, there's it's busier, there's you need, if there's increases 5 times as many deadlines, you need to be able to handle that pressure, and we want clients to have a relationship with their accountant, so we don't want to kind of separate out all the tasks too much, because otherwise it becomes very kind of disjointed from the client experience. We're having to invest more money in staff, and that involves either employing new staff that's more senior, or upskilling and not retraining but additional training for existing staff who have got the appetite and competence for it, the ability for it, to get them up to that level. So again, to answer this question, I suppose for the industry of aren't you just putting stuff into software, that is because that's no longer necessarily a day-to-day activity, and that's something that can be given to clients or kind of automation to do. Actually, what that means is there are more deadlines. The new penalty system, I mean, I haven't wrapped my head around that yet. I sincerely doubt if I know it was my team have, and one of them tried to explain it to me yesterday. I was like, oh, I haven't got the bandwidth to think about this right now. A new penalty point system. There's no clients. It's gone from, well, if you file your tax return late, it's £100 fine, to some convoluted point time based system. We need to explain that to clients competently, articulately, in a language they understand. So of course the staff we're going to be differently or more highly qualified, so the cost of just providing that service is more expensive to do, and so of course our prices are going to have to reflect that.
Okay, so you do see increasing the prices potentially?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we tend to do a price increase every year anyway. We decided not to do one during the pandemic, COVID, that year, because it just didn't seem like something that the market could tolerate. But yeah, I think that pricing definitely, and we have different pricing tiers as well. So we have kind of a SaaS model in terms of a basic, standard, premium and plus packages. And those, the differentials in those really relate to how long it takes to hear from people. If you want, because this is another thing as well, kind of on a slight segue, but expectation management of clients, because they can get instant answers from Google or Twitter, or they expect customer service to be instantaneous. They expect to ring up and just speak to an accountant immediately, without thinking, well, if my accountant was in the middle of my work, would I want them being interrupted by somebody else? We have to manage that expectation. So we're doing that with different pricing tiers, which give different SLAs and allow us the ability to affix different prices to that. So we're sort of using that as a way to adjust pricing to compensate for this additional cost that we're incurring.
I really like that, Lucy, because I think I've seen it in the businesses I work. I think, and lockdown, I think, has kind of compounded it, that everybody knows you're available, you're not going anywhere, and everything is now.
Yeah.
And it's that re-educating clients on, like I said, the value, the work that you do. And I think introducing that tiering system definitely helps give some context to the work you do.
Mm-hmm.
I also think your point of, like, when you said about understanding the point system, and that it does lead me sometimes to think that with MTD, with the increase in the software companies, and I believe, the software companies have definitely helped, but I think what there's kind of been that disconnect is, as well, is in the aim to make businesses understand what you do, to be able to create the value proposition, to be able to get them to kind of value the work you do. Has it been oversimplified to the point where now we're having, say I'm not an accountant, but where the industry yourselves are having to actually rebuild up the value proposition, because what unknown was able to be in some way quantifiable. Now with media, with with businesses, it's oversimplified it.
Mm-hmm. I actually think you're right, and I think it's this difference between so I suppose if you're selling a car, I'm trying to think of it, if you're selling your EVs, electric vehicles, Tesla, Jaguar, whatever else, the easy way of explaining that is it's a car with a battery. And I go, oh, I understand that. Like, yeah, I get that. Car with a battery, plug it in like I do my phone. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. As a consumer, that makes sense. But because I know a car is a very technical and difficult thing to do, and I know the technology that goes, I assume the technology that goes into these batteries and these things, I don't kind of then begrudge paying the price, because I'm like, well, I couldn't do that. That's really, sales in that aspect is a really simple thing, because it's going, you plug your iPhone in, you plug your car. This is the new electronic world, and everyone goes, oh yeah, that's completely relatable. Sales is all about making something relatable to the consumer so that they understand the pain point and decide to purchase. However, I think that in accountancy, I mean, the problem is you've got accountants and vendors have software vendors have deep pockets and big budgets and whole creative teams. And those creative teams aren't accountants. And those creative teams go, wouldn't it be great to have a little robot that goes around, it looks like it does all the work. And yeah, people really relate to that because, it's all automated. And everyone goes, oh, yeah, people really relate to that. And no one's gone, does this damage somebody in the middle? Does this make it look too simple? And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think as an industry, we're suffering from slick sales and marketing from people who are supposed to be our partners, but are actually ending up making our ability to sell a little bit more difficult. If I was going to be very controversial, which I'm obviously definitely not, is that deliberate? I felt for a long time that maybe there's certain sectors that want to see accountants as the middleman, and want to cut that out. And we're just doing currently as an industry a terrible job of proving our worth. And maybe also standing up against these vendors going, no, I mean, we saw it with, there was, again, won't name them, we all know them, it happened in the States where they started marketing direct to clients instead of their accountants. It's just happened in the UK. That's, all right, twice is a line, it's not a pattern yet, but it's happened twice in the last couple of years. Let's not be the turkeys that voted for Christmas, right?
No, and also as well, I think with the MTD and the changes now that are coming in and doubling and quantifying the work, now is the right time.
Oh yeah,
to really, like you said, is to really push the value and the work that you do. Like you said, for the lawyers, I think now is the time, because this could be potentially very, very high stakes.
Yes.
For business and for the economy. And I always say to my accountants, my partners, is it's everybody, software companies, accountants are obligated really to keep the economy going.
Yeah.
By being there and making sure it's clear, not simple, but clear.
Yeah.
What's at stake and the value you bring, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think if there's going to be a moment in time to do it, this is it. I completely agree, Louise.
I love this. This is giving us so much things we can discuss in the future. But yes, I'm totally on board with what you said, and there is a piece of work that needs to be done, I believe, by the software vendors, where they will at least help to minimize the damage that has been done, because the accountants are, it's kind of in our name, but they are superheroes, because they make many times from things that seem impossible to make sense, they do make sense of it. So definitely food for thought. And it is, as Louise saying about obligation, I think it is obligation from the software vendors as well to be mindful of this, because ultimately, we need it's interdependent relationship, and they do need accountants it's not, even if they, as you said, pointed out, they're trying to cut out the middleman, but ultimately they need accountants. And probably if they would listen more to the feedback of the accountants, even sometimes the products would be making more sense in some cases. So this is very interesting. I think we're going to wrap up on this one because we could go on, and I'm conscious of the time, but we're going to revisit. I'm going to think about the topic for next week, because I think I'd like to continue on this, and you are all very welcome to join next time. I just want to thank Lucy. You've been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're so welcome.
You are busy. Thank you. We have you given us very valuable insights. So we're going to continue on this theme. And yes, please feel free to join us if you're free any next time. But thank you all for attending, listening in, for your comments, contributions. Have a lovely Thursday. Hopefully, it seems like it'll be a sunny one in the UK. So enjoy as much as you can. And I'll see you all back next week. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks so
Bye.
much.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.